Hey, everybody. He's George Bailey. She's Mary. I'm Mr. Potter. No, wait a minute. That ain't it. He's Uncle Billy. She's Violet. I'm Clarence. We do have a wonderful life, but it ain't It's a Wonderful Life. It's Vikings Report, Drew and Ted. Drewster, how are you?
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right. That's right.
How you doing, Ted Glover? Man, sometimes I feel like I'd never been born.
You've got your wish. You've never been bored.
You know what I noticed about that movie?
What?
Every other line is, I need a drink. He's going to work, I need a drink. He gets home from work. Honey, you need a drink. Everybody needs a drink. I guess in 1928, drinking was big.
Yeah, it was 1940s. The 1946 is when.
Oh, was it 40s?
Yeah. You know, that movie, like, I know a lot of the younger generation kind of pans that movie these days. I've loved that movie for the longest time. My wife and I watch it every year around this time, so that's why I picked it.
Merry Christmas, Emporium! Merry Christmas, you wonderful Billy and Lone!
How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing really well. We're 10-2.
It's third down. Is it Jefferson time? Cousins throws. Caught! Jefferson! Touchdown! Jets down 5. White launches. Picked off, and it's over.
Got their second game with Detroit coming up. We got a big preview coming up on the show, but I wanted to welcome everybody. Welcome to our show. We got a great crowd that follows our show. We're ready to roll again tonight. How's everything going with you?
Bankruptcy and scandal and prison. One of us is going to jail. Well, it's not going to be me.
Good. Ruby, how you doing? You ready to rock and roll?
I am. I was thinking, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm doing about an 8.
It's pretty good.
Oh, come on. You guys don't know what that's from?
No.
I've won 8 times.
Yeehaw!
I can show the number 8 in many ways.
Oh, here we go. The fantasy. She's kicking our ass in fantasy football.
I had to put a jab in there.
She had her 8th win, and I haven't won since opening week. You know what's funny about that opening week, Ted? I set the record, 126.
Points, yeah.
So that's my claim to fame, I guess, for the whole year.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to kind of try and speed through things. We're recording later in the week than we normally do. So what Ruby's going to do is she's going to throw up the link about Purple Plain Forums, VikingsReport.com. Then she's going to throw up our fantasy football teams for the week and our Super Toe Challenge picks for the week. So, Ruby, wait a minute. Before you hit it, Drew, what time is it?
All right, I'm cooler than you are. So why don't you fix your little problem and light this candle?
He's right. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings, so light this candle.
Yes! Resume the countdown.
All right, I'm cooler than you are. Why don't you fix your little problems and light this candle?
He's right. Let's light this candle.
He surely is. Light the candle.
Yes. Resume the countdown.
There we go. All right. So Ruby's going to hit the promos for VikingsReport.com, PurplePainForums.com. Then we're going to throw up our fantasy football teams on the screen, and we'll see you on the other side for our extravaganza preview. So, look, we got a big show tonight. We got Vikings NFL news. We got hashtag nobody cares about your fantasy team. We got our Super Toe Challenge. We got our preview. We got trivia. But before we get going, PurplePainForums.com. Purple Pain Forums, that is the best Minnesota Vikings chat room around. It's better than social media. Like, you just get so much crap on social media, just these negative, trollish comments. You don't find any of that over on Purple Pain Forums. Funky Town and Dan Chat do a great job of moderating that board. And it's not just Vikings talk. It's college football talk. It's stuff that's not even related to sports. You can talk politics there if that's your thing. But it's well moderated. It's very respectful debate. A lot of great folks there. Great original content. Great contests. PurplePainForums.com. Go check it out. The other site we'd like you to check out is VikingsReport.com. Our website has links to all of our social media accounts. links to Purple Pain Forums, sections in the webpage for all of our contests. You can see the latest updated standings for Nobody Cares About Your Fantasy Team and Super Toe Challenge. Just a great site. Ruby's done a hell of a job getting that all set up. If you want to see the Vikings Report Vault, go check that out, and you can see what prizes are available. We give away prizes at the end of each live show we do. We got a link to our Zazzle page where if you want to buy a coffee mug or a travel mug, you can do that as well. So VikingsReport.com, go check that website out.
This recording's just going smooth as a cactus.
All right, so that's our fantasy picks for the week. Again, just head on over to VikingsReport.com. Put your picks for the week, Team Drew, Team Ted, Team Toonces, over there or in the comments section below. Just pick a kicker. The one you think is going to score the most points between the kicker, Ruby, Drew, and I pick. In the comments below or on our VikingsReport.com website, you'll have a section there for the Super Toe Challenge entries every week. And if you have the most points at the end of the season, you're our Super Toe Challenge winner. Meow, meow! Drew, before we get to the preview, I think our buddy Robert W. Farnsworth is set up and ready to go. Hello, everybody. Robert W. Farnsworth here. This week, our 10-2 first place in the NFC North Minnesota Vikings hop the Atlantic Limited to Detroit, the Motor City, to take on Jared Goff, Aiden Hutchinson, and the dastardly Detroit Lions. This week, will the Vikings clinch their division, or will they not? We'll find out. All right. So, look, folks, the Vikings, big game. They can clinch the NFC North this week with a win against the Detroit Lions, who are currently 5-7, winners of 4 of their last 5. And, Drew, did you notice? I know you have dabbled in the dark arts of gambling.
Hey! I got $2,000. Here's $2,000. This will tide us over to the bank reopens. All right, Tom, how much do you need?
I dabbled in a lot of dark arts, Ted.
Did you notice that the Lions are favored this week?
Yes, and it's in my intangibles.
Oh.
Intangibles. Yes, I did notice that. I noticed it's all screwy in Vegas right now. They don't know what's going on.
Why do you think they're favored? Because it makes no sense to me.
Everybody slurps on the Lions because they've been losers every year, and if they show any ounce of good play, everybody jumps on board with that team. Just goes to show you how disrespected the Vikings are. They're 10-2.
Yeah.
You know, I saw something today. It said Lions are favored by 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
But Vegas said Vikings have a 57% chance of winning. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
Well, the Lions have won 4 of their last 5, and those teams have been Green Bay, who's 5-8, Chicago, who's 3-10, the Giants, who have gone 1-3-1 in their last 5 games, and the Jags, who are 4-8. But that does not strike me as a massive winning streak, to be quite honest. I don't know. I think that's why they have them favored. It makes no sense to me. And like you said, nobody respects the Vikings, but we'll figure that out.
You know what? It's fine because it's going to be used as motivation for the Vikings. It's going to take them to victory this week.
All right, so we're going to move off to the side. We're going to pull up our big board. It's the old tribute to our NFL Today from CBS with Brent Musburger, Jimmy the Greek Snyder back in the day. We got our categories as we have every week. We start out with quarterback, way up here somewhere, and we finish all the way down here in the bottom with intangibles. What are intangibles, Drew?
There's things you can't see, Ted.
There's stuff you can't see.
I got good intangibles tonight.
That's what she said. All right, so the first category is quarterback, Jared Goff versus Kirk Cousins. Jared Goff's having a better statistical year. Jared Goff is not a bad quarterback. You could do much worse in the NFL than to have Jared Goff as your quarterback. But there's something about Kirk Cousins that he's more aggressive, taking more shots. This is kind of becoming a weekly theme with us when we talk about Kirk. When it comes right down to brass tacks, Kirk gets it done. So I'm going with Kirk Cousins.
You know, first time they played back in week 3, they had almost identical statistics. 25 for 41 for 277. Kirk Cousins was 24 for 41 for 260 and 2 scores. But I still got to give the check mark to Kirk for 2 reasons. The best team he's always played against is the Lions. He always seems to have really good days against the Lions. This year, he's showing great bounce back ability, Ted, in these games. And that's something that I'm very happy with his game this year. He doesn't let the mistakes avalanche over him and ruin the game. And I got to give my check mark to Kirk Cousins.
Run game. What do you got for the running game, my man?
In the Lions' 12 games, they've been over 100 yards in team rushing in 9 of them. So they run the football fairly well, including the 139 they put on us week 3. If you remember, it was that Jamal Williams guy. It wasn't even Swift. He had like 90 yards and 2 scores. Cook had a great day himself, 96 yards rushing and a touchdown. Cook and Madison both had touchdowns on the ground the first game they played in week 3. I think they repeat that this week. I'm giving the Vikings a check mark. Just slightly better than the Lions, I think. Lions run the ball okay, but the Vikings, I feel like they're starting to get into a groove. Back in week 3, our run defense was a lot worse than it is now.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason I give the check mark to the Vikings for the running game.
You know, I'm going to go with Detroit here. The Vikings are 25th in the NFL in running the ball.
Yeah.
In terms of yards. The Lions are, I believe, 10th. The Vikings have problems running the ball and getting an advantageous down and distance. I mean, you run the ball on first down, a lot of times you're only getting 2 or 3 yards, and it's putting the offense behind the curve. I think Detroit is better situationally running the ball. I think Dalvin Cook is the best running back of the running backs on both teams. But overall, I think the Lions have run the ball more effectively than the Vikings have this year. That is why I'm going to give the check mark to the Detroit Lions.
That's more than fair, Ted. I cannot argue those points. And that's brass tacks talking right there.
Receiving game. Detroit's offense is nothing to overlook. They're a very good offense. They're one of the better offenses in the NFL.
Right.
However, put up their best receiver against the Vikings' best receiver. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson. Edge goes to the Vikings and Justin Jefferson. You throw in the T.J. Hawkinson, used to play for the Lions, kind of revenge factor thing going on. I think the depth overall is a little bit better for Detroit, but I still like how you talked about Kirk playing very well against Detroit. Adam Thielen's had some great games against Detroit. Justin Jefferson has had some great games against Detroit. I'm going to give the edge to the Vikings here, especially when you add in the Hawkinson factor.
How can you not like Hawkinson in this game? I mean, everything's pointing to feed that guy the ball. Red zone, middle of the field. You know he wants to spank his old team. You know he does. That's got to be a big factor going into this game. The Vikings receivers always bring it every week. The passing defenses on both sides are pretty weak. For all the reasons you just said, I'm giving the Vikings the check mark. Let me point out this St. Brown guy. The last 3 games, Ted, 30 catches, 312 yards and 3 touchdowns.
He's legit, man.
His last 2 games have been over 100 yards. Becoming an elite receiver in the NFL, Vikings better double him and slow him down.
Yeah.
But overall, you hit the nail right on the head with the Vikings getting the check mark. That's why I'm also going there.
Offensive line. What do you got for the offensive line?
Detroit is a whole hell of a lot healthier than the first time we played them. I remember your boy Jonah Jackson wasn't playing. They had some guy named Dan Skipper in there.
How could you forget Dan Skipper?
Not to be confused with Skipper from the Gilligan's Island, the great Alan Hale. We want to throw out a shout out to Alan Hale tonight. Jonah Jackson was out. I think Ragnow was out too, wasn't he?
I believe he was, yeah.
They got both those guys back. If Darisaw can't go, I have to give the Lions a check mark on the offensive line. I don't think Darisaw's playing, Ted.
I think he's close to playing. I think they'll sit him out this week. I think he's coming out of concussion protocol. That said, the last 4 or 5 weeks, the Vikings have faced some of the best defenses in the NFL this year. And other than the Dallas game, which the offensive line got completely whipped, I don't think anybody can say anything other than that. They just got physically manhandled by the Cowboys. Every other defensive line the Vikings have faced, they've done pretty doggone well. Blake Brandel, they kind of threw him to the fire against Dallas. Now he's had a couple games under his belt. And look, he's not Christian Darisaw. But for a guy that is supposed to come in and play 2 or 3 games while your guys like Christian Darisaw are out, Blake Brandel has acquitted himself quite well, in my opinion. I think he's done about as well as you can expect him to play based under the circumstances. Ed Ingram, I thought, has started to play better the last couple of weeks. He still has his moments, but he's getting more consistent. He still is, I think, close to giving up the most pressures in the NFL for a guard, but he's kind of starting to come around too. I'm not saying this defense is a slump buster defense, but this defense that the Vikings are getting ready to face is a slump buster defense. Their defensive line doesn't scare me. Their linebackers don't scare me. Their secondary doesn't scare me. There's a reason they're the worst defense in the NFL. I think this week the Vikings offensive line plays well. That's why I'm going to pick them.
Damn. I feel like changing my check mark now. First time we did the preview back in week 3 for the Lions, both of us were really praising those big cats up front for Detroit, which is Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, and Isaiah Buggs. Remember, we talked about how active they were and how athletic they were. In the first meeting between those guys, they only had 3 total tackles between those guys. Vikings controlled the defensive line very well in the first meeting. With Tomlinson back up, I have to give the Vikings a check mark on it.
I do too. Now, I'm going to throw some praise towards your boy, Aiden Hutchinson. He's had a good year, and he is legitimately in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's played well. In week 2 against the Vikings, he got shut out. His name wasn't called one single time. A lot of that had to do with Christian Darrisaw, so it's going to be interesting to see if Brandel plays, how well Brandel matches up against Hutchinson. But he's the only guy on that defensive line that really is somebody the Vikings need to pay attention to. So, Isaiah Buggs is a complete weak spot. I think they're going to run at him all day. They're just not good, other than Hutchinson. I mean, they're going to need to get better on the defensive line in the offseason. Contrast that with the Vikings. Patrick Jones II last week, I think, probably had his best game ever as a Minnesota Viking. Had a sack, was in on a couple tackles for loss. Harrison Phillips is coming on. Dalvin Tomlinson is back, and I thought he played well in his return. James Lynch is a guy that when he's in there, you kind of stand up and take notice of him. I think overall the Vikings defensive line is better here. So I give them the check. When we go to linebackers, how can you not give it to the Vikings? I mean, the Lions only list 2 linebackers. They kind of go in a 4-2-5. It looks like most of their base. Malcolm Rodriguez and Alex Anzalone, and he's good, but he's not having a good year, kind of like Eric Kendricks. If you still consider Zadarius Smith and Daniil Hunter, you're kind of your outside backers in this 3-4 setup. You still have Jordan Hicks. Yeah, it's the Vikings linebacking core.
I'm going to give the check mark to the Vikings linebackers as well. I think Kendricks finally had a Kendricks game last week with 14 tackles. 9 of those were solo. That's usually the numbers he puts up, but recently he hasn't been putting those numbers up. I thought he pursued very well, missed a couple tackles, but he was really involved in the game and really involved in getting the team hyped up. The only thing you really got to watch out for the Lions is Alex Anzalone. The first meeting back in September, he killed us, Ted. He killed us. He had 11 tackles, 9 were solo. He had a sack, a tackle for loss, a pass defense, and 2 quarterback hits. You have got to slow that guy down more than that. He was starting to control the game. The Vikings better keep him right in the sights on what they want to do defensively and put him on his ass, because he was, everything you just mentioned about the lack of seemingly having talent on the Detroit side. If you don't control him, he makes up for all those guys. Yeah. So they need to control him. But you factor in Z. Smith and Hunter, you got to give it to the Vikings linebacking core as having the upper hand in this game.
Secondary. What are your thoughts on the secondary? We got some injuries the Vikings are still dealing with. They got guys getting healthy.
I think they both suck, but the Vikes are last in pass defense. Everybody knows that. The Lions are 27th. So who knows what we could see out there Sunday. I mean, both these teams are really lacking any success back on the back end. Dantzler comes back, which is really going to help the Vikings. We know Evans went on IR. He's going to be out for 4 weeks. In the first meeting, Josh Reynolds, St. Brown, and DJ Chark had 15 catches. Probably going to expect them to get around the same. Let's just hope we can keep them out of the end zone. I don't know who to give the check mark here to. I'm going to go with whoever you say on this check mark.
So, okay, I'm going with the Vikings, and this is why. They're both below average units. Patrick Peterson is probably the best cornerback among all of them on the team. He will probably match up the best against Amon-Ra St. Brown. St. Brown is still going to get his, though. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Peterson is a true shutdown corner like he once was. But the one thing I like about the Vikings is that they have a penchant to get a turnover. They had 2 interceptions last week. For that, although they give up yards, they can also make a play. So for that reason, I'm going to give the slight edge to the Vikings here.
And to kind of piggyback on top of that, the Vikings are number 1 in the NFL in fourth quarter or overtime interceptions. Yeah. Number 1, they have 10. That's how you win football games. That's basically what it is. That's what it is, Ted. That's what it is. Why is it that, Ted?
Because chicks cannot hold their smoke. That's what it is.
So, yeah, I'm going to go with you on that. They seem to be getting that big turnover when they need it.
And the Vikings turnover differential, they're sitting at +8. They're third in the NFL. The Lions are better than I thought. They're +1. But, yeah, I just think the Vikings have better ability to make a play than Detroit does. How about red zone, Drewster?
Both teams, the first time they played, were 3 for 3 in the red zone. If you times that by 2, that's 6 for 6 in the red zone.
Look at you.
The Lions are number 1. Get this. They are number 1 in the red zone for offensive percentage TDs. Number 1.
Wow.
And then they're last on defense. How are you supposed to give a check mark to that? Red zone defense is what won that game against the Jets for the Vikings. The Vikings defense holding the Jets to field goals is what won that game. I'm going to give the check mark to the Vikings. Their red zone has sucked all year, Ted, but I'm telling you, it's getting better.
It is. I am too. 3 weeks ago, I think it was, the Vikings were dead last in the NFL in red zone defense. They were 32nd in the NFL. Now they're 20th. They've climbed 12 spots in just, 3 games, whatever it was.
Right.
And that says something about how these guys are starting to respond as we get towards crunch time in December, division on the line, all that good stuff. And then when you look at the Lions being last in the NFL in red zone defense now, you just got to think Kevin O'Connell and Kirk and the weapons that the Vikings have on offense, they're just licking their chops, man. They can't wait to take the field against this team. I'm going to give it to the Vikings.
If they could capitalize and get a few scores ahead, blowing leads has been a big problem this year, but they still got 5 weeks to figure it out before they get to the playoffs.
Special teams. A couple weeks ago in our Facebook group, the Gallahorn, you said Greg Joseph is not going to miss an extra point or field goal for the rest of the year.
Yes, I did, Ted.
And he has not missed a kick since then. I like the Vikings special teams. I think they're decent. I'm going to give them the check mark here.
Both teams have solid return games. Lions kicker Badgley has made 11 of 12 field goals this season. He was a perfect 4 for 4 last week against Jacksonville. This is close, but I'm going to give the edge to the special teams for the Vikings. You know that Ryan Wright's on pace to set a Vikings record for the best punt average for a season.
Yeah.
50% of their punts have gone inside the 20. So Ryan Wright, as much as a punter could be a factor, he has been. I'm giving my check mark for special teams to the Minnesota Vikings.
What about coaching?
You know what? Back when we did the preview week 3 game, the first meeting between the Vikings and the Lions in September, I gave the check mark to Dan Campbell. I was wrong. Ted, I was so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, Detroit's team played well enough to win that game, but Dan Campbell himself made 3 or 4 really crucial mistakes. He lost that game for Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose him in the preview. What a dummy. I'm not going to do that again. I'm giving my check mark to Kevin O'Connell and the Viking staff this week. I think the Vikings are going to roll the Lions. Check mark Vikings.
Here's what I think of this coaching matchup. If Kevin O'Connell was the head coach of the Detroit Lions, they would be 10-2. If Dan Campbell was the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, they would be 5-7. Dan Campbell, he may grow into the gig, and he may be getting smarter and making better in-game decisions. But Kevin O'Connell, it feels like Kevin O'Connell was born to be a head coach in the NFL. When it comes down to making the right call at the right time to get your team in position to win, to allow your players to make a play, Kevin O'Connell doesn't miss.
And he's been doing it all season, Ted. It's not
all
a fluke.
season long.
Yeah.
The 2 losses they had, no coaching in the world would have helped them in that game. That's what I think of this coaching matchup, and I'll give it to Kevin O'Connell 11 times out of 5.
Ted Glover's on fire tonight. Fire! What do you got for intangibles?
Intangibles. All right. So I think the Vikings are going to be a little bit motivated. There's a hint of disrespect going on towards the Vikings among the rest of the league. They have to prove to people they need to beat a team convincingly. Everybody's all on Detroit's jockstrap because they beat 4 really bad or slumping football teams. Well, I think this weekend, the Minnesota Vikings are going to say, you don't need to worry about the future because we're going to beat your brains in the present, because the division's on the line. It would be a hell of a feather in Kevin O'Connell's cap to win the NFC North with still a month left in the season in his first year. I think that's going to be a huge motivator. I like the Vikings intangibles in all of this, so I'm taking the Vikes.
I am giving the Vikings the check mark in the intangibles. You know what? Calling the Vikings underdogs all week, that's not going to bode well. I mean, believe me, they are circulating that within the team saying, we're the underdog? Oh, we're going to see about that. It's going to erupt game time between the disrespect for being the underdog and the division on the line. I'm actually calling for a 2-score game. Could it be, Ted? They're getting my check mark, and I think they win by 14 or more.
All right, so after preview, we'll kind of slide back to the center here.
You know, the Lions were ahead after 3 quarters in the first meeting, 24-14. They had a 10-point lead. I remember both of us were thinking, oh, man, are we going to drop this game? Even though the Vikings rolled up 30 first downs in that first meeting, Ted, they rolled up 30 first downs. which might be the high for the season. Justin Jefferson, Jets, had his worst game of the season. He had 3 catches for 14 yards. He had 6 targets in that Lions game. You got to give him more than 6 targets. And I think O'Connell's going to look back on that box score and say, we cannot have a repeat of Justin Jefferson not involved in this game. Get him involved early. And then I throw in the Hawkinson factor, Ted. I think the Vikings are going to roll them. But the number one thing is the ball control. The first meetings, the Lions ran 76 plays, Ted, 414 yards, and more importantly, they had the ball for 34 minutes. So the Vikings need to improve the defense and get off the field. You shore up the time of possession, get JJ the ball early, mix in the Hawkinson, get the sacks, get the attitude going. My summary is, I'm telling you, Vikings over 2 touchdowns this week to seal the NFC North and to bring home the division title.
That's a good prediction. I like it. Let's get with the Right Reverend Jones. And gather around. You know, I mentioned a minute ago that everybody's washing Detroit's jockstrap because they've won 4 of their last 5. They've beat 4 bad football teams. You know what their record is against teams that are at 500 or above? Because I threw the Patriots game in there. 2-6. One of those wins was against the Washington Commanders, and the other one was against the Giants a few weeks ago. And the Giants are kind of, they're starting to tailspin a little bit. The Giants are starting to become who we thought they were. It does not sound like eating kneecaps. I think the Vikings are going to put some pressure on Jared Goff, who is going to cough the football up a couple times. The Vikings have a penchant for making a big play, getting a turnover when they need it. Goff has a history of just chucking throws up and throwing some just bad interceptions. I think that's going to happen. And so at the end of the day, when the clock strikes 0 in Ford Field, my friend, we're going to hang the banner for the 2022 NFC North Division champion, Minnesota Vikings. And everybody's going to shut the hell up about Dan Campbell. Now Dan Campbell is going to go on the hot seat. All right, so that does it for our preview. We'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back to wrap it up with Drewster's Millions.
What is it you want, Barry? You want the moon? Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Barry.
Give her a gift of gold from Kay Jewelers. Gold makes the moment wonderful.
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking at her, dead?
Every kiss begins with Kay.
Look, here is the new Band-Aid plastic strip with new Super Stick. It sticks better than any other bandage. The proof? Take a dry egg at room temperature. Touch the egg with any other bandage. Brand X, brand Y, brand Z. Not one sticks. But a Band-Aid plastic strip with new Super Stick sticks tight instantly. Watch it again in slow motion. No pressure, yet we can lift the egg, even boil it. And the Band-Aid plastic strip never comes loose.
Maybe you don't want to broil eggs this way, but you do want the extra protection of Band-Aid plastic strips. They take better care of little cuts and scratches. They stay put.
Yes, even in hot, soapy dishwater. Neat, flesh-colored, almost invisible. Band-Aid plastic strips with new Super Stick stick better than any other bandage. Made only by Johnson & Johnson, the most trusted name in surgical dressings. Be sure you get Band-Aid plastic strips.
We are back with Drewster's Millions and SKOL Vikings.
Yeah!
I declare bankruptcy!
All right, welcome to Turbo Trivia. How you guys doing?
Good, Ruby. How are you?
I'm good. So this week we have only 2 categories since we're on Turbo. One of them is movies better than It's Wonderful Life because unlike Ted, I do not really care for that movie. And Ryan's picture puzzles.
You know who else doesn't like It's a Wonderful Life?
Who?
Communists and the Taliban. That doesn't like It's a Wonderful Life. So roll on with your trivia. Roll on with your trivia.
Yeah, and you noticed too that I gave you a normal name this week, and you're still mean.
Moolah Toonses?
No. All right, for 100 movies that are better than It's a Wonderful Life.
So funny.
This 91 movie is a sequel to an 80s movie starring Brooke Shields.
Blue Lagoon 2.
Good enough. Return to the Blue Lagoon.
That was not better than It's a Wonderful Life.
For 200. This 2007 movie stars Cuba Gooding Jr. as a dad trying to save his childhood summer camp from bankruptcy.
What? Was it Daddy Daycare?
You're very close.
Daddy Day Camp?
Yes.
Day Camp? Yeah. Also a terrible movie and not better than It's a Wonderful Life.
Daddy Day Camp made $39 at the box office.
I will not put up with this blasphemy much longer.
All right, one more. Keanu Reeves should have convinced Sandra Bullock not to make this sequel.
Speed 2, and it was a horrible movie, and it was not better than It's a Wonderful Life.
Sandra Bullock, smash or no smash?
That's 100% smash.
Okay.
All right, so these you will enjoy a little more. These are all current Lions players. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For 100, name the player.
DeAndre Swift.
Yes. That is correct. God, I wonder if you guys are just going to totally sweep me here. For 200, name the player.
Alex Anzalone.
Yes.
Can we have a show with nothing but picture puzzles, please? That would be funny.
Oh,
one day, maybe. All right, for 300 and the sweep, name the player.
Okay, something Raymond.
Yes, Khalif Raymond. Khalif Raymond.
Nice.
Yes. All right, thank you for playing Turbo Trivia. We will see you next week.
Even though the one category I did not agree with, it was still very funny.
Commies and the Taliban?
Commies and the Taliban. All right. That does it for this episode of Vikings Report with Drew and Ted. Again, thanks so much for tuning in and liking and subscribing and commenting. And don't forget, we'll be around Sunday afternoon right after the Vikings-Lions game right here on our YouTube channel for Vikings Report Rewind. Drew, you're a funny and fantastic co-host. Ruby, this show wouldn't even be what it is without you. Thank you so much for everything you do. For now, we'll try to do better the next time. So, buddy, take us home.
Couple things I want to throw out there as we end the show tonight. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. There is a viewer or listener we have who has been with us the whole time during Vikings Report, and we've been pronouncing his name wrong the whole time. I want to say Jason, who we've been calling Jason Feinhog. His name is Jason Finagi. And Jason, Ted and I want to say, we're sorry we've been mispronouncing your name, but we are going to get it right from now on. If Finagi's not right, we're just going to go with J-Dog or Jello Shot.
Your new nickname is Jello Shot. What do you think about that, J-Shot?
Jason Finagi, that is our bad and completely unintentional. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for donating the prizes you've donated. You are a Hall of Fame fan.
Yes, I wanted to point that out because we like to get things right because we're all about the listeners. A couple milestones this week, Ted. 73 rushing yards for Dalvin Cook puts him at 1,000. That would be his 4th 1,000-yard rushing season. Also, Dalvin Cook only needs 11 yards to pass Bill Brown and move into 4th place on the Vikings all-time rushing franchise list. Wow. Bill Boom Boom Brown, Don Glover's favorite. Robert Smith is number 2 all-time in Vikings rushing yards. Dalvin Cook is 1,100 yards behind him. Dalvin Cook has played 30 less games than Robert Smith. So we got a couple of milestones to look at. I wanted to throw those out there. Thank you for watching our episode. Thank you for watching our show and supporting us. We love you guys, and we will see you after the Lions game for a little live Vikings chat. Say good night, Ted.
Good night, Ted. Bump, bump.
You did that so well.
This Christmas, rediscover the heartwarming story of the sleepy, economically backwoods town of Bedford Falls.
Nobody ever changes here, you know that.
And its one extraordinary citizen, Henry Potter.
I may lose a fortune, but I am willing to guarantee your people too.
This capitalist had a dream to transform Bedford Falls into a modern entertainment and business mecca. creating hundreds of new jobs. But one man would stand in his way.
You remember me, George Bailey?
Draft dodger George Bailey and his socialist building and loan.
We've got to have faith in each other.
Will Henry Potter's common sense reforms win the day?
What does that get us? A discontented, lazy rabble instead of a thrifty working class.
Or will George Bailey succeed with his scheme to redistribute wealth?
They had to wait and save their money before they even thought of a decent home? Wait for what?
How far will Bailey go to destroy free markets and economic progress? How low will he sink?
Where's that money, you silly, stupid old fool?
This Christmas, enjoy a classic as it was meant to be understood. Fox News presents Mr. Potter and the Commies of Bedford Falls.